Heyo, what up? Uh, it's a me, Nima. We're gonna have our little lecturino. Welcome. It's week one, day two. Hi. I just want to ensure that Calgary is on the line. Let's see, Calgary. So waiting up for. If you can send me a thumbs up, some kind of emoji. Sweet. Yup, works as well. Thank you, Peter. What up? So what up, everyone? Oh my God, it's week one, day two. I mean, really, you're almost finished boot camp. At the rate we're going at, this is just bananas. You're just zooming right through. Today we're gonna be working with Node. I've got a particular thing that I'm showing you. It is the dev workflow. The dev workflow. So I'm gonna hop into some notes that I have for this. Just give me a second here. This is under old, and then CD week one, day two. That's not the correct one. Oop. It's all right. I've got some stuff here. I'm gonna be kind of hopping into some code. Yeah, I'm gonna be hopping into some code, and we're gonna work our way through it. But I want to start off by saying that the point of the lecture is not the code, right? We're gonna talk about specific JavaScript stuff later on today. You've already been working on little like challenges and stuff like that. That's cool. You can continue doing that. But the point of this lecture here is for me to show you my approach to solving a problem. Right. Also, apologies to Calgary if I sniffle. I'm gonna mute once in a while. I'm not sick. I think I just had some really spicy stuff earlier. But then maybe that's what everybody says. So I'm not sick, but I'm not sick. I promise. Yeah, my girlfriend just tends to put sriracha sauce on eggs a lot. I don't like sriracha sauce. I don't. But I'll eat it, and I feel like I'm part of this crew, and I know there's more of us that pretend we like sriracha. It's not that good. It's not that good. And what's that? It's pretty meh as far as hot sauces go. But there's sriracha t-shirts. Right? There's people who really buy into the whole sriracha thing. I'm dude, there's better sauces. I don't know if you've ever had what's the mega death sauce? Yeah, Blair's mega death sauce. This stuff here, actually pretty good. Oh yeah, you're the spicy dude. Have you ever had Da Bomb? Okay. Yeah, Da Bomb tastes like genuine garbage. This stuff here. If anybody ever whips this out and they're like, yo, you want to go for a ride? No. Stranger danger. Leave. This bad sauce. It tastes like genuine spicy garbage. It has no flavor. It's beyond insanity. My friend Grant, for his birthday a couple years ago, decided to do a thing where he made a bunch of chicken wings, inspired based off of the First We Feast, hot wings challenge or whatever. So he bought a whole bunch of hot sauces, made a whole bunch of chicken wings, and we filmed ourselves going through it and eating this stuff. And we would cheers. We made it through all of the hot sauces going ooh, a little bit of spice. And then we made it to Da Bomb, and there's genuinely 5 minutes of footage of people screaming. We did not know what we were in for. Nobody had ever tasted that before. My friend, Jason, locked himself in the bathroom. Justin ran to the sink and just kind of ran his face under. These are real names, by the way. I brought kind of a thing of almond milk. This is my almond milk now. So I chugged a 2 liter of almond milk. Do not recommend. Does not make for a good birthday party. Not even close. Stop right before the mega death. No, not the mega death. The Da Bomb. Blair's mega death is delicious. Go for it. Okay, so that being said, the thing we're working on today is the dev workflow. I have a particular folder that I have stuff in here for. We'll write a couple notes. You're going to kind of see what my typical process for working through a lecture is, making sure that I'm not muted, what my process for working through a lecture is. As always, Calgary, I have my notifications on, but they don't always pop up, which is weird. So if I don't notice you, just spam at here, or one of the students, like, here, if you could check. I am going to make a habit of checking over onto this side. But again, if I make a mistake or two, please don't hate me. Okay, so we're going to start off by opening up Sublime. Sublime is the tool that I'm going to use to be writing today's stuff. Now, this was all the stuff from yesterday, but instead I'm going to go and open up a particular folder, which was, oh man, let me get a tissue real quick. Folder that I have here called old, and then week 1, day 2. Just have a bunch of stuff in here. Let me close yesterday's stuff. And don't save. Okay. So I usually will start lectures by making a new like I'll always generally have a folder of stuff already ready. This is just the way I lecture. I'll always have a bunch of stuff already ready, but I usually start by making a new file. And again, the notes that I'll send out to you are gonna be nicely formatted and stuff, and I've generally already prepared that stuff. But during lecture, I'll write down like loose scrap notes to kind of get my thoughts out and to show you my process, kind of show you the important bits. But they'll be written out in this README that I'll send you. But usually I'll start off, I'll go notes, MD. This is today's notes. I'll save it under the particular project, week 1, day 2, save, and then I'll go, okay, week 1, day 2. This is lecture for the dev workflow. All right, and then generally I'll also set some goals at the top. Be like, okay, these are the things that we're going to aim to kind of understand by the end of the lecture. Right? Today's goals. Today's goals are a short discussion about Markdown. So we're going to talk a little bit about what Markdown is. I kind of hand-waved it yesterday. We're mostly going to be focusing on coding iteratively and incrementally, right? You're going to look at how to debug, manual testing, writing clean code. Generally, at the beginning of the lecture, the goals I lay out don't make any sense. These are just words. We're going to have to see this stuff in action to really understand what's going on. I'm also going to throw in something here, like a general check-in for, you know, how you doing, right? Like, how's week 1, day 2? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I also want to sum up today's general kind of idea as a question. How do we build towards a solution in an ideal manner? Right? How do we build towards a solution, let's say, to a problem? Right? I'll be posing a problem, and we'll work our way up towards solving that problem with JavaScript. And we'll see this stuff in action. And later today, we'll have a breakout. The breakout's going to dive deeper into like JavaScript stuff. But right now, again, what I want you to focus on is my process for Googling, my process for scaffolding out solutions and stuff like that. Okay, so first of all, how you doing? How was week 1, day 1? Like, how was that for you? Did you have a good time? Did you make friends? No, did I see some nodding heads? Cool. All right, there you go. We made friends. Did you find some like lunch buddies? You getting into like a good flow of like bus schedules and train schedules and stuff, right? That's all stuff to probably keep in mind. I am a chronically barely on time person. I still make it, but something that really kind of starts hitting halfway through boot camp is like, man, I don't even have to go to lecture, man. Like, I can put on my hood and I'll sit in the back of the class, and what do people do? They like sharpen their pencils menacingly and chew gum, all that typical boot camp student thing. Okay, no, like heads up, please do arrive to lecture like on time and attend. Like that's cool. It can be really tempting not to, especially when you reach about halfway through the boot camp. But just do, just do. There is an attendance thing, like an email, which I know Davey mentioned yesterday, but I just want to mention again. If you find that you might be late, just shoot a quick email. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention is pace yourself. Boot camp is not some kind of sprint, right? Really do pace yourself. Do the work at a pace that feels natural for you. We're gonna push you, like we're gonna push you hard. So you know, be prepared for that. But also understand that like this isn't easy, especially if you've never coded before, if you've never been like in an intense program before. Do check in with, you know, the education manager, right? Do check in with Davey on Calgary side. Do check in with Kat, right? Great resources to have when you're talking about things like, and I really want to put this word out there, imposter syndrome, right? Really early on in the, it doesn't happen so much later in the program, but like really early on in the program, people get very much in their heads, right? In the first couple of weeks, get into their heads and they'll say like, I can't do this, right? You can, like you can absolutely do this, and there's going to be somebody in the space who feels exactly like you do, or who can talk to the feelings that you feel, right? So as soon as you get that little voice, like reach out to KV over there, reach out to Davey. I've just volunteered you. Reach out to Kat, reach out to me, right? And we can talk through that stuff early on, right? Often it's just an approach thing, right? Nobody knows how to code in the first 2 weeks, right? But it's an approach thing that we can get through. Okay, so that was my general check-in. Obviously, there's more stuff to talk about. We can make time for that later. Short discussion about, oh, actually, does anybody have any comments on how their first day went or any of that? And none from Calgary. Okay. So yesterday I hand-waved this thing called Markdown. I said, oh, save your stuff in a Markdown file. Just save it. .md, save it in a Markdown file. A Markdown file is just a text file, right? You're probably familiar with .text files. Just a file into which you can write text. But the thing that is special about a Markdown file is that if you write your text, if you write your notes using a specific nice format, in Sublime, colors will pop up. Wonderful, right? Notice if I do one hash, everything else on this line gets bold, right? £1, everything gets bold, and the little pound sign is purple. If I make my way down, I went 2 pound signs. Yo, 2 pounds. I've got 2 pound sign. Still bold, but this one is orange, right? My logical next step would be to throw 3 hashtags. Right? This one's, you know, also orange, but something that I might notice is that visually this thing seems distinct from this because it's got 3 pound signs. Markdown is really just a mini little formatting language to make your notes look pretty. Right? That's all it does. Makes your notes look pretty. It's just a little language, a little standard for you to do things like, hey, all my lists are going to be done with bullet points. Or maybe all my lists will be done, or like an ordered list might be done with text. Numbers. And notice how Sublime automatically kind of colors this stuff for you. Right? Markdown is just going to be nice, right? It's going to be nice. And then the thing that happens with Markdown is, you know, you can make your headings. So I'm going to call these headings. This is a heading 2. This is a heading 3. Okay? You can do things like emphasize particular words, such as this is bold. I think it's 2 maybe. This is bold. Right? And you can do things like this is italic. Right? Simple things. And then once you've done this stuff in here, when you start reading your little notes, they look pretty. And when you post this stuff up on GitHub, if you were to put your notes up on GitHub, so you generally use Markdown for things like your README documentation for a repository. If I look on here, the stuff in the README is going to be all pretty, and that gets generated from the Markdown, right? That's really all I want to say right now. I'm going to give you a Markdown cheat sheet in the notes that I'll send you. Just practice writing some, see how you feel about it, and you'll do it for your project, right? Also, you can do things like write code inside of your Markdown, and it'll be generated to look like code. It'll look pretty. So you're going to see me do a lot of that over the course of the bootcamp. You're going to see all the mentors really, or instructors do a lot of that. Other than that, I don't have a ton to say about this, and they'll like use it for when you're writing your notes. Sound good? Dope. Okay, so you will again get a cheat sheet with some stuff. For example, this is a heading 4. This is a list. Another list with indented items. If you want to write some inline code, you go backticks. If you want to write some blocks of code, you can go backtick, 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 and then the file type. So JS, and then it'll like actually use syntax highlighting for JavaScript. Or here, Python, it'll do syntax highlighting for Python. Just cool stuff. Just cool. You can even do links and images. So you'll see that in action when I send you the notes. Okay. So that being said, those are general kind of overview of Markdown. I know that was really loose and hand wavy, but I just want you to know about it, and then you can play with it. The main thing that we're going to spend today on, or this morning, is a particular problem. Right? So this problem here, it's a word problem. If you think back to like 4th grade math class, and the hairs on your neck start standing directly upright. This, word problems to me can be spooky. But here's the trick. Word problems don't have to be that scary. You can break them apart. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to break them apart and see how we can scaffold our way up to finding the solution in this word problem situation. So let me take the problem, shove it over into the notes that I'm working on, just so you don't see the rest of the answers. And we're going to work our way through this. So reading through the problem here. Today's problem is to write a node program. Let me read this out in my town crier voice. Write a node program that takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments, goes through each, and then prints out the sum. Skip any non-whole numbers, but do support negative numbers. Oh man, look at all these requirements. It's so much to work on. He even said it in a scary, impressive place. Maybe not that scary. But looking at this, I often don't even really know where to start. If it's just this big clump of text. That's where you're going to find Encompass a lot of the time. Maybe not so much at the start of the bootcamp. We really try to split things into clear instructions. But the deeper you go into the program, the more clumped up you're going to find the paragraphs to be. And you need to do your own kind of archaeological work to figure out what's going on in there. Write a node program that takes an unlimited number of command line arguments. Even off the top, there's words that I just don't understand. Like, what the heck? Maybe what the heck is a node program? Maybe I don't know. What are command line arguments? Right? What does it mean to skip any non-whole numbers? All this stuff could be spooky. But if I look deep enough, I'll notice that there's different kinds of directives here, different kinds of things that it's asking me to do. The first thing here is write a node program. And I can say, hey, listen, I'm going to go ahead and break it down. I'm going to break this down, and I'm just going to go through, and I'm going to go write a node program. All right, that is a thing. I can start by writing a node program. Right? Take in an unlimited number of command line arguments. Okay. Take in an unlimited number of command line arguments. Go through each. All right, that's a thing that I can say is a command. Go through each. Each what? Each command line argument. Whoops. Each command line argument. And then print out the sum of the command line arguments. Do I know what command line arguments are? No, but I'm using my like grammar to figure out that when it says print out the sum, it'll mean print out the sum of the command line arguments, right? I'll find out what that means in a minute. Skip any non-whole numbers. Do support negative numbers. Slowly I'm breaking this into like chunks, and I could even turn this into a list for myself. I could say, hey, okay, first things first, write a node program, right? Take in unlimited number of command line arguments, go through each, print out the sum, and then skip any non-wholes and do support negative numbers. And as I look at this a little bit more, I realize that even this can be simplified a bit. Takes in an unlimited. Does it really have to be an unlimited number of command line arguments? I could start off by taking a limited number of command line arguments and just seeing what that means. Right? I still don't know what this is, but as soon as somebody says something like unlimited, I'm like, I'm going to put a limit on it. I'm going to figure out, take in one command line argument, right? Then maybe we'll do 2 and then maybe 3. And then unlimited. Number of command line arguments. Go through each, print out the sum. And then this stuff here, skip any non-whole numbers. What if I didn't? Oh, what if I just don't? What if I didn't skip any non-whole numbers? Right? Do support negative numbers. Again, what if I didn't though? Is it the end of the world? Right? So these last 2 things here, they seem kind of like extra, right? Printing out the sum of the command line arguments, this sounds like it's actually part of the core functionality. Like I need to get something printed. Print out something, probably the sum of the command line arguments. And this stuff over here, these last 2, these are like extra little bits. Okay, extra little bits. I can work my way through this list. Write a node program, command line arguments. I look at this a bit more, I'm like, okay, what the actual heck is a command line argument? Right? This is at step 2 for me. This isn't even step 1, so I could even delay this question. Right? What I want you to get from this is like when you start a project, if you try and understand all of it, right, in both the macro and micro sense, you're going to get confused. There's going to be so many parts to a thing that you're not going to get, right? You're going to have to pick things up as you go along, and you need to become comfortable with saying, hey, I don't know that thing yet, but it's just across the horizon. Like, I will get to it when I get to it. Let me put a pin in it. Okay, that's something that I want you to become really, really comfortable with, is growing like a backlog of stuff that you need to learn, right? These first couple days of boot camp, or honestly this first week, it's important for building like good learning skills, right? Something that I make a big habit of is making lists, right? Making lists of things that I need to learn. Maybe things that I don't need to learn right now, but things that I will need to learn, right? Making lists of things like vocabulary that I have learned. Because you're going to learn a lot of new words and you're going to forget them, right? You need to be cognizant of your like cognitive load. Like, what are you able to hold in your head at any given point? Can't expect yourself to remember everything. So my recommendation is, when you run into a problem more than once, right? If you run into the same problem twice and you tell yourself, man, I just ran into this. Like, how did I run into this again, right? That's a place where you go, hey, you know what? I'm writing that down, right? I'm writing that problem down, or I'm writing that solution down on a piece of paper or in a document, right? And I'm going to make an actual habit of going back to look at it, right? You're going to run into problems with if statements or for loops or whatever. Write that stuff down and refer back to it. So here, I'm realizing eventually I'm going to need to figure out what this is, but I'm passing it off now. And what I've done here is I've broken my solution down into little modules, right? One of the things about these little modules is that I get a higher level kind of point of view of how my program is going to work, but also a peek into maybe what it'll look like at a granular kind of point of view, right? The other thing is it gives me checkpoints, right? And checkpoints are important because A, there's something that, I can pat myself on the back for, right? I can tell myself, hey, you know what? I'm going to make it through 3 of these 6, and then I'm going to go get a drink of water, and then I'm going to come back, right? So setting myself milestones like that is important. There's also the fact that each of these things can be tested, right? I can say, hey, did I really write a node program? Did I really go through each command line argument, right? Did I really skip any non-whole numbers? Those are each things where I can ask myself, did I really, right? And get a true or false answer to it, yes or no. So you're gonna start by write a node program. Write a node program. I'm gonna go into, boop. Is this a Git repo? It is a Git repo. Oh no. That's fine. I'm gonna go into just my folder. I'm gonna make a new folder inside of this Git repo. And I'm gonna do all my work in there. I'm gonna do my best to try and commit, so you can look through the commits to see what's changed over time. And this commit is gonna be called some project. So this folder is gonna be called some project. I'll cd into some project. Some project, and in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and make my, I'm gonna start even cheekier. What I'm gonna do is just assume that this project works. So this thing here is a node program. Okay, now a node program at this point, what we may or may not, be comfortable with is the fact that when I say node program, it means I should be able to, in the command line, go node, and then write the name of a thing, like some.js, right? And this should do something. Should do something. Okay, we're gonna make yourselves like a bunch of test cases in a minute, but node some.js should do something. It should eventually print something out. So I go into my terminal, and I go node some.js, and I could start by making like a hypothesis. Right, we're gonna apply the scientific method here. I'm gonna say, hey, node some.js, this is what I expect will happen. I expect this to print out the number 10, right? Let's just see, does it print out the number 10? And it didn't. It didn't even print out a number, really. It printed out this funky error. Now, errors are not bad. Errors are totally fine, right? And I want you to become comfortable with errors, and I want you to become comfortable with reading and understanding errors. They're going to be your main source of information. This one here says something specific. It says cannot find module, and then it has a link all the way down to something called some.js. What is the issue here? Yes. The file doesn't exist yet, right? I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. Right? The file does not exist. So I need to actually have a some.js. Ignore the fact that I have a some.js here already. I'm talking about inside of the sum project. This some.js is just an old solution to this problem. So in here, like, I need to have a file, some.js, to be able to run. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go touch some.js. And now I have some.js. Just for us right now, I'm going to rename this to old sum, just for no confusion. Oop. Also, spoiler, you saw a little bit of the solution. Whoops. So some project now has some.js in here, right? That's cool. That's fine. I want you to see that it's totally fine for me to run Node without having anything there, right? And I don't freak out about the error. I just understand from it like, oh, it can't find the file. Now, Node's going to call it a module. We'll talk about why it's called a module later on this week. But right now, it can't find that particular file. Now, I've made that file. So my hypothesis now is that when I run this node some.js, right, when I run this, I shouldn't get the same error. And I didn't. Node some.js now just straight up doesn't do anything, right? Because some.js is there. It just happens to be a file. Just happens to be a file that doesn't have any text in it, right? So now I know, right, through this process, I know that it's legal for me to have an empty JavaScript file. It's totally legal, right? It wasn't the thing that I set out to learn, but I just learned it along the way, right? I might make a note of that. Huh, fun fact. It is legal for me to have an empty JavaScript file. Okay, so at this point here, I know I have the some.js set up, right? It doesn't actually do anything yet, but I'm pretty proud of myself, so I might add some.js if I check my status, new file, some.js, right? When you do a commit, you don't need to commit everything, right? You can just commit the things you want to commit. So me right now, I'm just committing the fact that there's a new file, right? So I'll go git commit make some.js, make blank some.js, right? And then I'll push. Right? Ignore the errors. They're not errors, they're just little messages for me. But I've pushed. Okay, now the question here is write a node program and check. Where do you go? Checkaroo. There we go. A little pat on the back. It might feel like a little step, but honestly, it's a pretty big step. Without that step, we wouldn't be able to move forward. The next thing here is to take in an unlimited number of command line arguments. Now, at this point in Compass, right, we would have an explanation of what a command line argument is. We'd have an explanation you could read into it. Right now, I might go ahead and I might Google, what is a command line argument JavaScript node? Question. Right? You can straight up formulate your Google searches as actual questions. Like Google the way like your grandpa might Google something, right? Like, hello Google, what is a command line argument in JavaScript node? Thanks. Nah, that's totally fine. And eventually, what? Node.js command line arguments? That's exactly what I Googled for. Right? That's exactly what I was looking for. So the thing is, you're going to find over the course of bootcamp, that brief conversation about imposter syndrome that I mentioned earlier? I'm like, people start feeling like, they can't do it. Here's the thing, like, you're not unique. That's the thing I learned coding is you're not special in any way. There's so many of us. We've all run into the same problems. And it's not bleak. When I say you're not unique or you're not special, I don't mean that in like a bleak, grim way. I mean that like there's many people who've run into the same problems as you, and you can stand on their shoulders, right? You can also use their voice, right? Those people will have posted on the internet in the form of a question. So if you form your Google search in the form of a question, right, you'll match the stuff that other people have searched for. It just works. Hot tip, right? Nima, hot tip 1. Google in the form of a question. Let me throw out another hot tip real quick. This is something you might want to note down now and come back to later. If you're ever wanting to learn something or find cool resources for something, like whatever, like say Node.js. I want to find cool things for Node, like tutorials and resources and videos and starter projects. If you Google using the word awesome, like awesome Node.js, the word awesome in the developer community is used to signify that somebody's making like a list of cool resources, right? So awesome Node.js is going to get me an endless list of curated collections of cool resources. Awesome Node.js. Say you want to learn whatever React is. We're going to learn that in week 6. You go awesome React, right? Awesome React. Say I want to learn, I wonder if that works for like biology. Awesome biology, no way. Curated lists of resources for biology. And then my favorite one is just awesome, where this person here has made an awesome list of awesome lists. So this is really like your master list. So say you want to learn about big data. Here are a bunch of, where'd you go? Here are a bunch of lists for big data stuff. Right? So those are my 2 hot tips to start off. When you're Googling things, Google in the form of a question or Google the word awesome and you'll find what you're looking for and more. Cool. Okay, so that being said, I've Googled what is a command line argument, and I might go ahead and explore some stuff here. Now, in the notes that I'm going to send you, there's going to be some tips about the particular websites that I recommend looking at for figuring out the answers to your questions. Now, where did we put it? I'm looking for. There we go. Nima's tip on how to figure out problems. Again, doctors hate him. First of all, try it out on your own for 15 minutes, right? This is when you're trying to figure out a problem and you're just really stuck. Try on your own for 15 minutes, meaning just mash your head against the keyboard, look at Google, look at documentation. So that's something we're going to look at in a minute. And look at Stack Overflow, right? Stack Overflow, especially at the beginning, and really over the course of your career as a developer, this website here is Stack Overflow. That's going to be your go-to source for great answers. Stack Overflow is like Yahoo Answers for devs. Now, if you see things like CodeBurst.io, Human Who Codes, Butter CMS, leave that for like last, right? I don't know what these are. These are some person's blog. Might be good, might not be, who knows. Stack Overflow, proven track record of being awesome, right? If I go to this, I'm going to find that there's always somebody asking a question. So there's a title, and there's also a body to their question, and I can explore to see whether the body of their question actually describes the issue that I'm having, right? And then I can look at the answers, and there's this nice little green check mark on the best one, right? Now, just because it's the best one doesn't mean it's the best one for you. It's the best one for this person who asked the question, right? But there's other solutions as well. So you'll see this one has 2,000 upvotes. This one here is 575. Not a small number, probably still a good solution, right? So spend your time on Stack Overflow. It's going to feel weird at first, right? But you're going to get comfortable with, the UI. You're going to get comfortable with the language that people use, right? The way people format questions, the way people answer. Get comfortable with it over time. So I've Googled this to figure out what a command line argument is, and I find this thing. Now, at this point here, usually what would have happened, right, when we've given you a question, is we'll also have given you maybe examples for how to use the program that you're supposed to build, right? So it's a little unfair for me to tell you, hey, write a node program, take in yada yada, without giving you an example of how it's supposed to be used, right? So generally, usage, there will be an example that'll say something like, hey, you could go node sum.js 1, 2, 3, 4, and this should give us maybe the number, it's 10. Because it'll go 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, right? And then node sum JS 1 minus 1, 1 minus 1, that should give us 0, right? Because negative numbers, those should work, right? It said do support negative numbers. And then I'll make another one here, node sum.js 1, 0.5, and 1. This should give me 2, because the 0.5 should be ignored. Right, so now I have some actual examples of usage, right? And as I build up my program, I can use these little examples, right, to see if I actually get the output that I'm looking for. I'm going to manually test my program, right? And I'm not just going to manually test my program at the end. I'm going to manually test my program the entire time. Every time I make a little change, I might go through and be like, okay, what does it do now? Right? I'm not going to leave this stuff up to chance. I'm going to test it every time. I might also, maybe these are the ones given to you, right? I might also come up with your own examples, right? So I would take some of the examples that you've received and mess around with them and say, okay, what if I do 4, 4, 4, 4, right? That should be 16. And if I did 8, 3, 4, 1, that should be, I don't know, I shouldn't have done this, 7, 16. Oh, wow, 16 again. Let me throw a 2. 17. And then maybe I'll do something else. 1,000 and 0.5. And this should be just 1,000. Right? Big number. And then Make all kinds of little checks. It's fun. It's fun to come up with little examples, because then when they work, you go, woo, it worked. Okay, so I've got my little test cases here. And now I can explore the fact that a command line argument, and I'll just tell you this right now, a command line argument is anything that you write in the command line after the name of the file, right? These things here, they're command line arguments. Interestingly, as we're going to explore, these things here are also command line arguments, right? We'll see that pop up in a minute. Taking the time. Okay, so I would like to be able to go, and I'll pull this straight from my examples. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hypothesis. It gives me 10. Hypothesis failed. It didn't print out anything. But it's fine. That's fine. It didn't break. Right? It didn't break. Now, I'm going to go ahead and cheat a little bit. I'm going to be sneaky. Be like, hey, you know what? This thing here, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's supposed to do 10. I know how to do this. Sum.js. Console.log 10. Hey, look at that. Woo! All right. Pack it up. Let's go home. We got it. We can code. Look at that. A little solution right there. Node, Sum.js, 1, 2, 3, 4. If that was my only test, 100% of my tests have passed. Beautiful. Right? But I went through and I made a couple other tests. This one over here is supposed to give me 0, right? So say that you're the one who had written this code, right? And you call over a mentor and you're like, hey, can I go home now? And I'm like, yeah, let's see it with another test case. This is supposed to do 0. You start sweating. You're like, oh no, I don't know if my program can take this. And you look at me and you're like, well, there's a 0 in there. You know, like I got part of sure, it's a start. What we might do is maybe write an if condition and say, okay, if the numbers are, and this isn't going to be real code, 1, 2, 3, 4, then console log 10, and if the numbers are 1, -1, 1, -1, again, this isn't real code, console.log 0. Like, you might go ahead and try to figure out how to write this, but the thing is, the more and more test cases we come up with, the less feasible this is going to be. We need to come up with a general solution. Sometimes we don't need to come up with the most general solution. You just need to do what works, right? But right now, because of the tests that we've been given, we need to come up with something better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those little scaffolded out, where'd I put it? There you go. I'm going to take these little scaffolded out kind of notes that I made for myself, ignoring the extra little bits. I'm going to write them out here. Okay. I might write them down as comments just so I can see them. And what I might also do instead is write these out line by line. Right? Write a node program. Okay, I did that. Takes in an unlimited number of command line arguments. Goes through each and print out the sum. Right? And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to write my code to actually follow these comments. Right? To actually follow that structure that I set for myself. Write a node program, we already did that. Now taking in an unlimited number of command line arguments, that's something I can tackle. I might look at this, print out the sum, and I'm like, yo, I know, console.log 10. Like, I got that. That's good for now. Right? Technically, this here is sort of done. And as I explore this, take in an unlimited number, and I explore the answer to this Stack Overflow question, where the Stack Overflow question says, hey, I want to get this word folder. And for us, it's actually kind of similar. I'm going to have a bunch of numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to be able to grab those. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar. When I explore the answer here, what they'll tell me is that, hey, listen, all of the arguments are stored in process.argv. This person has also very helpfully given us a link to the node documentation, which I'm opening up in another tab. Maybe we'll look at it a little bit. But they've also very, very nicely pasted in the description from the documentation. process.argv is an array. Awesome. Maybe I know how to deal with arrays. Containing the command line arguments. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Right? The first element will be node. The second element will be the name of the JavaScript file, and all the other elements will be any additional arguments. Right? Now, the description, fairly straightforward. Maybe I'm still a little confused. That's totally fine. This person's even given me some code saying, hey, process.argv for each is going to do a bunch of stuff. We'll generate a certain thing. I could, if I wanted to, copy this code over and see what it does. Right? But I'm actually, for right now, going to be a little bit more deliberate in working my way up here. Now, this is the documentation, the link that they gave me. This is the documentation. Now, this is a huge file. Huge file with lots of other things I can go to, lots of pages. You're not going to be comfortable in the documentation just yet. Right? By the end of like next week, right? By the end of next week, you'll be a lot more comfortable. Right now, my instructions or my recommendations for you are to go Stack Overflow first and then docs. Right? In the future, that will flip a little bit. You'll look at the docs first and then Stack Overflow when you become more comfortable with navigating documentation. But right now, don't be upset with yourself if you like look at this and you're like, I don't know how to read this. What is a PID? Right? Like, I have no idea. You'll figure that out over time. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to straight up start. I'm going to start in here by going console.log, right? Process.argv. Because that's what that person in Stack Overflow told me. Right? Process.argv apparently holds a bunch of things. And generally, when I console log things, I also want to console log maybe like a label with it. So I'll go like something over here so that when this gets console logged, I see it on the screen with like a word next to it. And I'm going to hop into Node. I'm going to run one of my tests. And I'm going to see what happens. And it turns out this is process argv. Everything that I've highlighted. So starting at this square bracket and ending at this square bracket over here. Right? And what that person told me was true. The first thing in this array is the file path to where your node lives on your machine. And it lives inside of Vagrant, NVM, versions, node, yada, yada, yada. Do we care about that right now? No. Right? The other one is the link to the file that you're working with, like its file name. Do I care about that right now? Not really. But everything else is 1, 2, 3, 4, which happen to match up with 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I can play around with this. I'll be like, what if I just do 1, 2? Cool, it's just 1, 2. What if I do just 1? Awesome. What if I do nothing? Right? Totally fine. Right? And I'm just going to keep playing around with this. What if I do some text in here? What if I do all sorts of weird stuff? Right? And really try and break this. What if I do one really, really long one? Just one really, really long number. Okay, it looks like it managed to hold it in there. Right? I'm going to do one last one. What if I do a bunch of numbers that are separated by commas? It looks like it puts all of them in as a string. Right? This is stuff that, maybe is written in the docs, but I really want you to just mess around with it and tinker. Right? Budget time for yourself just to mess around, because your road to actually solving a problem is not going to be a straight road. Right? You need to get comfortable in the little playground of tools first. So as I play around with this process.argv, I'm like, hey, this is an array. What are the things that I can do with arrays? I could loop through arrays, right? I could loop through arrays, so I might do something like process.argv, right, inside of a for loop. Right? I'm going to do this by doing like var arguments equals process.argv. And in here I'm going to go for var I equals 0. Well, I is less than arguments.length I++. I'm just going to console log arguments, but I want to console log one of the arguments at a time inside of this for loop. What do I have to do? I have to do square brackets, right? I have to do square brackets. I can do square brackets, and I can put something in the square brackets to index something in this array. What's the thing that I'm going to put in the square brackets? Yeah, I. There we go. I. So now here I can print out each one of the arguments. Okay, I'm going to toggle this line off. Hot tip with Sublime. When you're on a line, you can go command / and it'll toggle comments on and off. Hot tip. So I'm going to comment it off just so that I don't get that printed out. I'm going to run it. And what I end up getting out is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 when I had the whole thing. But if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, I get that, then 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the thing here is that I don't want all of them. I don't want all of them, right? Because I can't add these things. These aren't part of the numbers. I'm going to need to somehow only do these ones over here. Now, there's a couple different ways that I could do this, right? I'm going to solve it in a particular way. How do I only get the arguments from the second one onwards? How do I only get those arguments? Or to rephrase is something I might Google, how to only get, well, you know what, I could do this. How to get every element in an array from the second on or something, right? I could Google this a bunch of times and just kind of see what happens as I change my my phrasing. Because the thing is, I want to only have everything but the first two. So this here, the way I phrased this apparently didn't make any sense. And how to extract every second value from the array, that's not really what I wanted. Array prototype every tests whether all elements in an array pass. That's not, again, really what I'm looking for. That's fine, right? The first time I Google stuff, I might just get things wrong. So I'll do this again, and I might say, get everything but first two in an array JavaScript. Right? And this says, hey, the slice method returns the selected elements in an array. It selects the elements starting at a given place. Right? And that sounds close to what I'm trying to do. Right? Remove the first element from an array. Right? That sounds interesting. This dude here is a link to W3 Schools. W3 Schools is great. Right? It's fantastic. But what I'm going to recommend looking at more than W3 Schools is developer.mozilla. Right? So you might have already started looking at this. This website here is called the MDN. Right? The Mozilla Developer Network. This is one place where you're going to find documentation for JavaScript, and I urge you to make this a regular kind of hangout place, right? Let's just check out the MDN a little bit, right? See what's going on. Because the documentation here is just beautiful. It's tasty. This is just, it's sauce. It's so good, right? It always starts off with a short description of what that particular function does. So this says, hey, the slice method, I'm going to say method to be the same as function for right now. The slice function returns a shallow copy of an array, right, selected from beginning to end, not including end. And the original array is not modified. It always has a little bit of a example at the top that I can actually edit. So it tells me, hey, console log animals slice 2 is printing out camel, duck, elephant, which ignores ant and bison. I'm like, yo, that's what I'm trying to do. Right? If I tried to change this here to node sum.js and 1, 2, 3, 4, and I run this, I end up getting back just 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So I can mess around in here and see if it actually does what I'm looking for. Right? And once I'm ultimately convinced, right, I can move my way down and start reading the syntax. So the MDN is always going to have this syntax part. Syntax, heads up, it's going to be a little freaky the first couple times you look at it, but you'll get comfortable. What syntax says is you can call the slice function on any array, and you can pass it 2 optional parameters. The syntax thing is always going to put square brackets around optional things. So it's saying you can optionally put begin and optionally put end, whatever those things are. The parameters have descriptions down here. Begin is an optional parameter that is the index at which you want to begin. And end is, again, optional, and it's the index before where you want to end. Before which to end. There you go. Sorry. So I can mess around with the thing in here a little bit and mess around with this and change that to 3 and see that I get 2, 3, 4. Eventually I'm happy with it. I go in here and I say, hey, arguments, right, should be arguments dot slice 2. Right? Everything but the first 2. And I could console.log arguments now and see if that's really what I want. Now, I don't like, personally, changing the same argument and like putting the value in there like that. So I might actually just rename this to var numbers. I just like having different variables because I never know if I might need these arguments again. So I'm going to comment out this for loop for a second, console log all the numbers, and see if I only get out the ones I want. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Perfect. Right? I have now got all those numbers, and I can play around with an unlimited number of them. Look at that. Beautiful. I didn't even really need to do anything funky. I know that earlier I had set for myself the fact that maybe I could try out 1 argument or 2 arguments or 3 and then maybe unlimited because I thought maybe that would require different steps. But it just so happens that this is something that solves itself. I can throw in as many as I want and my solution fixes itself. Cool? Cool. All right. Now, last thing we're going to do before we take a break is I'm going to loop through it. Because one of the things that I said in here is I want to go through each command line argument. Right? Go through each number. Right? I even put it in here saying goes through each. Now, as you work on these problems, you're going to start associating phrases. You're going to start associating phrases with computational concepts. Right? When I see the word go through each, that like alarm bells go off in my head and I think for loop. Immediately. Go through each. Through each. That's a for loop. Right? So I could go ahead and I can make my for loop. I can make my for loop go through every one of those numbers now. Right? Go through each of the numbers and I'm just going to console log everyone. Okay, so my program right now technically has 3 lines. It says var arguments, then just the numbers, and then go through and console log. Right? And I can run this and just make sure, again, it's printing out all the numbers, put it in a line. And if I mess around with this, I could do things like, hey, what if I get rid of the square brackets? Okay, that gets me all of the numbers every time. I might do something like, hey, what if I just console log I? I run this. Cool. I get all the numbers from 0 to 12, right? Tinker, mess around, see what happens if you change little bits of your code. But I might settle on the fact that if I need every one of the numbers one at a time, I'll go numbers I. Okay. What we're going to do next after the break is we're going to hop into printing out a sum of these numbers, right? So we're going to have to work our way through that. But we are going to take a break around here. I know that this was like a whole chunk of stuff. But again, what I want you to focus on is more of like my method for working through this stuff. Googling things, forming like my Google searches as questions, spending some time on Stack Overflow and the MDN, right? Things like that. Those are the things that I want you to focus on. And also how I've broken the problem down, right, into sentences or like directives, I guess, more like commands of things that need to be done, and use that as a scaffold where I'm filling in the code. Right? Are there any questions at this point? Sweet. I know I've been moving at like a glacial pace, so when we come back, I'm gonna turn the fire up a little bit. We're gonna explore some other stuff. Any questions from Calgary? Oh, Peter's writing. Nope. Okay, well, if you do have questions, feel. Oh, Peter, no! What did you see, Peter? Your camera's dark. Oh, like my face? Yeah. Okay, I'll figure that out. I know I have like a pretty face, so I'll make sure that's visible a little bit better. But as long as you can see the screen, that's the important thing. Cool. Let's take a 10-minute break. Sound good? At 10:16, we'll pick up and we'll run through the rest of it. Yo. Alright, what's up? I know I'm not visible there on the screen right now. Calgary, the camera is... There I am, there's my hand. So I'm here. Just wanted to check if you could let me know if the brightness is a bit better for you. So I'll just give it a minute. Calgary, whenever you're back on the line, throw me some kind of signal, first of all, that you can hear me. Oh, there's Greg. And also let me know if the visuals are a bit better. Hey, thumbs up. My face is not as glittery today. I did not I did not use the glitter soap. I might make okay. We'll figure out the brightness before like the next lecture. I might make it like a habit to use glitter soap because I'm not gonna lie, I felt glamorous. The thing about it is, even though I didn't use glitter soap, there's now glitter all over my towel. So it's probably gonna be like I'm just gonna have to get a new towel at this point. Is that a regular thing that people do though? Like use glitter soap? Yeah, all the time? Kate's disappointed that I'm not a disco ball. So we're gonna do this last little bit of the lecture. Generally, lectures are not going to take the entire 2 hours. They might take an hour and 45, hour and 50. We're going to aim to finish at, let's set a goal for ourselves, 10:48. I'm going to aim for 10:48. And we'll see if I hold true to that. Somebody here, Peter, right? Peter here in Vancouver, let me know about a really cool extension. This extension here for Chrome is called MDN Search, which I haven't used yet. Let's see. MDN Search, if you add it to Chrome, add extension. Apparently, if I now go MDN space and search for something, it'll search the MDN. So I might do space arrays. And now it'll take me to an MDN search for all the documentation on arrays, which is cool. Or I might do MDN array slice. Right, then I can find slice right there. So that's actually really cool. Just quicker Googling if you want to use the MDN Chrome extension. Now, we had finished off when we were doing this looping through. Right, we were looping through stuff. That's good because we've technically done the go through each command line argument. Now what we want to do is print out the sum of the command line arguments. If I want to have a sum, and this is just something like a pattern that you're going to fall into. If I want to have a sum, I need to have a variable to which I can add to. I need to have a variable that starts off at something, and then as I'm looping through stuff, I'm just going to keep adding to it. Right? Sometimes you're going to see the word buffer be used, right? Later on in boot camp. But the idea is, again, I need some variable. This variable, I might give it some nice name, right? Some summing variable. I might call it sum. Now, if I'm starting a sum, what number might I want to start it off at? Big old goose egg. You got 0. 0. Var sum equals 0. And as I'm looping through this, I might want to increase the sum. I might want to go sum equals, right? And then the actual like number. I'm going to increase it by that. Now, I could write numbers square bracket I. What I like to do, personally, just to make things a little clearer for myself, is to split things up into multiple lines. So this here, I'm going to save in a variable, and I'm going to go var number equal numbers I. The one number, I'm saving it in a variable every time. just so that this line here can be a little cleaner. Oh, whoops. I made a mistake here. This was supposed to be plus equals. Right. Or I could rewrite this to say sum equals sum plus that particular number. Right. I'm personally a big fan of using variables a lot. Because variables are your chance to like put a label on it, right? To put a label on that particular piece of data. Or number equals numbers I. Sum plus number, and I might go through and I might put a console log in here. Right? I will do that in a second, but first I'm going to write a console log outside of here. I've already convinced myself that this thing here is working fine, so I could even get rid of it. So that was the console log that was just printing out every number. I don't need it anymore. So at this point right now, the only thing that should get printed is the final sum, and then a number. And I go through, and I say, hey, you know what? Let's run node sum 1, 2, 3, 4. My hypothesis is I get 10. I run it, and I got... Okay, well, if you flip these two around, it looks like a 10, right? Almost there. I'm in that, like, bargaining phase. Right? So I got the final sum. That printed out. But 10 did not. Something's going weird here. Somehow the way that I'm summing up these numbers is just not working out. And I can mess around with this a couple different ways. What if I do 1, -1, 1, -1? And that's what I end up getting. And let me do another one. Node sum 1, 2, 4, 2, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1. So now let's throw in a little bit of a mix in there. And I end up getting, again, what's starting to appear like each one of the numbers that I put in, but attached to each other with a sneaky little thing at the front. Bum, bum. An extra 0. Right? So something about the addition, something about the way I'm summing this stuff together is not working out. So I might throw in a console.log in here and see what's being built up. Console.log, maybe sum. And see what actually happens over time. The current sum. And now what I'm getting here is the current sum was 0, 1, and then 0, 1, 2, and then 0, 1, 2, 4, 0, 1, 2, 4, 2. What's happening here? It might be taking it as a string, right? It might be taking the number and just attaching it to the end of the previous number, right? As a string. Now I can explore this. I could say, hey, why is this? What is the type of the number? Now I don't know if you've seen type of before. Right? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Type of is a command, or it's a function that you can either call like this, or you can just write type of and then space. That will give you the particular type of the thing that you're dealing with. Now, my intuition would have been that I get a number every time. If I run this, I would want to see the type of the number should say number, but it ends up saying string. I could hop into the REPL, right? So I'm going to hop into node. Have you done this before? Can you put up your hand if you've never done this before? Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Brave. If you write just the word node, it won't run a program. Like, it won't run one of your scripts. It'll just put you into the node engine, and you can do things like math. Or console log math. Right? Or make variables. Yep. Yes. Pretty much. Very close. The thing is, the browser and Node are almost the same kind of JavaScript, but not exactly. We're going to explore the differences as we move forward, but that's really good intuition there. Yeah. Pretty much the same thing as working just in your browser console. So I might go now in here, type of some var, and get number. Right? That's cool. And if I went var some string, and I go type of some string, I get string. Cool, it's fine. Right? What I'm going to end up finding out is that as I use the command line arguments, this thing over here, and this is something that maybe I'll discover in the docs, maybe I'll discover in that Stack Overflow. What this thing here is going to do is every argument, is a string. Everyone. Even if I wrote a number, like it's going to come in as a string. So I'm going to need to go through and actually change this thing here needs to be turned into a number because it's going to be a string by default. Right? And I could play around in the REPL a little bit more. In Node, I can go, what happens if I do the string 1 plus the string 2? That gives me 12. What happens if I get 0 plus the string 1? I get 0, 1. And I'm realizing that's exactly what just happened right now. Right? Now, I could Google how to turn string into number JavaScript. I could Google that, how to turn a string into a number JavaScript. And there's a whole bunch of options under gomakethings.com. Maybe I want to explore these. Okay. Maybe I want to explore W3 schools. Maybe I want to explore Stack Overflow. Convert a string to an integer. Honestly, I'll let you just kind of go wild with this stuff. There are ultimately several options. The simplest way to do this is there's a number function. Right? So if I happen to be in the REPL and I did something like number 1, 2, 3, I can tell that that's an actual number in the end instead of a string, because if I go 1, 2, 3 there plus 2, I get 1, 2, 5. Right? So simple kind of drag and drop fix for my issue here, that the number first is a number as a string, but the actual number of our number is the number as a string converted to a number. Right? Notice I'm making little changes at a time. Now, I made a mistake and neglected to commit at each one of these steps, but that's something that I do encourage you to do, is every time you write something teeny tiny, commit. Right? Commit. Even you're not done the program, that's fine. You've made some progress. That's a place where you commit. Think of your commit as a save for now. Right? Like you should aim to just commit a ton early on in bootcamp. Later on, you'll develop like a better intuition and better strategies for when to commit. But right now, I just want you to get into the habit of just commit. Sound good? This is where I might make a joke about commitment issues, but I haven't put enough thought into figuring out how to kind of. So imagine I made a joke. Could we just go with that? Now I've added in that thing number. I'm gonna go ahead and run this thing again and go node sum.js 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna see that the final sum is 10. I'm gonna see that along the way the type of the number was number. The current sum is going up properly. Excellent time. Right? Very good. I can pull out all the useless stuff, like those console logs. Okay? I can pull that out. I'm going to comment it out right now, because when I give you this code, I'm going to give you a clean version and a dirty version. Okay? You can go through the dirty version and just kind of see what's going on in the comments, but I'm going to give you a nice clean version that has none of the trash. When you submit your projects, when you submit your assignments, clean out all the console log statements. Clean out anything that's not needed. Clean out comments that are useless. Unless a comment is in there to specifically say something like really important, remove it. So this comment here, I would remove it if I was submitting an assignment. When I run this now, it says the final sum is 10. And I try this out maybe for a couple other ones. The final sum is 75. This, just take my word for it, is 75. if I did, 1, -1, 1, -1, oh, whoops, not just that, but node, 1, -1, 1, -1, hot diggity dog, look at that. I wasn't even trying to solve that. I wasn't even trying, and it fixed it on its own. Apparently, negative numbers work on their own now, and if I look back at my original stuff, I have takes in an argument, absolutely, check. Goes through each command line argument, check. Prints out the sum, check. Support negative numbers? Absolutely, check. Right? Very much so. Skips any non-whole numbers. I mean, let's see. Could do 1, 0.5, and 1. From my examples before, this should be 2 instead of 2.5. Unfortunately, it's 2.5. Right? Now, I will leave this as an exercise to the student. I don't. Did y'all ever read that in like textbooks? Yeah, like chemistry or math textbooks and stuff. We leave this as an exercise to the student to figure out how would we possibly ignore the non-whole numbers. Now, I want you to know that it's not a big deal, right? It's just going to be like a little bit of an addition, because I know that the big idea of my project works. Right? The big idea of this thing, going through, adding up a bunch of numbers and printing them out, that big idea works fine. Right? This is probably going to need some if condition. It's going to need some if condition somewhere where instead of actually adding the number, it'll only add the number if it's, a whole number. Maybe there's a is whole function, right? Maybe there's an operator that tells me if a number is a whole number or not. I really just want you to explore that. Now, once I've gotten here, it's not like this is the end. It's not like this is the end of my project. I could still refactor things a little bit, right? But notice that like I don't care about making the most efficient solution or the cleanest possible solution until I get to a place where my thing actually works, right? Now, among the things that I could do when I refactor, are, let's see, I'm thinking, I was thinking maybe I'd want to show you the already refactored one, but what we're gonna do is actually just copy and duplicate this one here. So a new file, some refactored.js. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to make a more efficient, or maybe not more efficient, but just nicer looking version of this project. And maybe something that's a little bit more pretty and testable. First thing I'm going to do, just for the purposes of this, is get rid of all the comments that I don't need. Right? Turns out, all the sweat and tears over 14 lines of code. I'm gonna, well, technically less, because a lot of this is empty space. I'm gonna go through and start thinking about certain things. The first is that I have this functionality for, here I guess, looping and summing. That at the moment only works with the numbers that came through here, and I can only do it once. So like if I had another list of numbers, var other nums, and this one here didn't come from the command line arguments. This one here was just a list of numbers, and I want to print out the sum of these as well. In this script, what I have to do is copy this code and go down here and paste it again and edit it so that it works with other nums instead. Do you know what I mean? Right? This code here, it happens once and then it disappears. I'm going to maybe need some way to capture this functionality and make it reusable. Right? So what I might do is make this a function. right? I might realize that this is something that I need to do more than once. So let me make a function called SumNumbers, where given a bunch of numbers, right, this is what it does. It loops and it sums. Now the thing that's new about this is that SumNumbers, it loops over a bunch of numbers. It doesn't loop over this one here. So for each of these bits where it says numbers, I'm going to need to replace this to say a bunch of numbers. Right? And now technically, if I was to run this thing, so this was node 1, 2, 3, 4, but this was for sum refactored, nothing happens because I'm not actually using that function. I made it, but I'm not using it. There's a difference between a function declaration and invocation. A declaration is, hey, there's the light switch, right? Or like, I declare bankruptcy. Like, it's just a thing. Nothing happens. You're just declaring it. There's the light switch. An invocation is actually using the light switch to turn the lights on or off. Right? So here I'm saying, hey, there's a function, and if I want to use it, I need to go SumNumbers with those numbers from above. Often what I'll do is I'll take the functions that I'm making and I'll make sure that they are built way up at the top of the page, well before they get used. So SumNumbers. And then if I wanted to sum these other nums, I might go SumNumbers other nums. And now when I run this, what I end up getting is the sum of the numbers that I gave it. 1, 2, 3, 4 does give me 10. And the sum of those other numbers that added up to 13. And now this function is super useful because very simply I can copy and paste the function and have the code run multiple times. Okay, whoops. Whoops. I somehow changed this to PT instead of other nums. And I run this, and I end up getting final sum 13 multiple times. Beautiful. So that's one thing that I might do when I'm refactoring is change this into a function. Another thing that I might do, right, and this here is stretch. This here is stretch. I don't want you to actually get this, is that as I move forward in the bootcamp, I might learn about the fact that there is a special kind of for loop for looping over everything. The thing about for loops like this is that I have to give them a start and I have to give them like an end condition. And it's annoying because I might accidentally make a mistake. I might set the start to the wrong number. Right? I do that all the time. Or I might get the ending wrong as well. Sometimes, because I've worked in other languages, I'll accidentally put a -1 at the end. So there's a special kind of for loop for looping over everything. I might go through and replace this with that special kind of for loop. Right? I might use that. I don't want you to see what that for loop is right now. I want you to maybe explore that. So I've put that in here as a little call out to, if you want, kind of see what that looks like. Okay. If you do want to see that like on a one-on-one, ask me or ask a mentor to show you, hey, Nima said there's a special for loop. What is that? Right? You will explore it later this week. And then later next week, there's some other stuff as well. Cool. Is there anything else I want to add here about this particular thing for the refactored? Not really. Just turn it into a thing. Now, over this process, right, kind of wrapping up, I said we would end at 10:48. We're on schedule. Over this process, the main things that I've done were break down the word problem into kind of like directives that I can manually test right? And that I can set as little milestones for myself. At each one of those, I should, and I didn't. Bad Nima. I didn't do it. I was supposed to commit at every single one of those, right? Commit, 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 commit. I made myself little test cases. Made myself my own little examples, and I could go through now and run those and check to see whether it does what I expected it to do. I did not do the non-whole number one. I'm leaving that to you. And I really, really want to make a point of the fact that I didn't do all of my coding to work towards the problem. Sometimes I did a little bit of playtime. Sometimes I did a little bit of tinkering. I went into just straight up Node on its own. Right? Sometimes I console logged silly things to see if I could actually get used to the tools. That's totally fine. It's not like 100% of your time on a problem needs to be productive. It doesn't all need to be working towards the solution. Meander a little bit. As the last thing that I want to show you here, and this is 100% stretch, it's going to be a particular tool for debugging. Right? We have done some debugging. I didn't explicitly call it debugging, but when we were trying to figure out what the type of the thing was and all that, that's debugging. Right? The main tool that we used there was console log. Right? Console log is going to be our vision into the project. If I don't have a console log statement, when I run my code, nothing comes out. Whoops. Nothing comes out. I don't know if it's working properly or not. The biggest place where you're going to be confused, or the biggest place where people get lost as they're writing programs is where their programs become like opaque. You don't see what's happening on behind. The more transparency you inject into your program with these console log statements, right, the more visible the inner workings of your program is going to be. This afternoon, you'll explore a tool that's going to let you do that extensively for like these initial kind of challenges. It's going to be a tool that shows you how your code's working underneath. I want to just give you the name of it. It's called JavaScript Tutor. And it's a program online where you can write some code. Write some code, console.log. Or you know what, let me not even do that. I'm going to go var sum, start from 0, and sum plus plus. So there's no console log statements in here, but when I click visualize execution, and you are going to see this tool in action in the breakout, what this gives you is a timeline that I can work forward and watch my code execute. See if the code's actually working the way I want it to. And I can keep track of the value of sum. So if I move it forward, I'll see that sum has gone up to 7. So that's cool. Right, giving you a little bit of transparency. This tool here, as you'll explore it in the breakout, is really only useful for small scripts. As your projects get bigger, this becomes impossible. You can't use this. Right? I do encourage you to play around with it. So JavaScript Tutor. But your way of doing this is going to be through console log statements. Make things visible to you. I can't overemphasize that. Right? Console log, absolutely everything. You can pull it out later. You can toggle the console logs in and out. Something that some people might want to explore, if you're feeling adventurous, is the Node debugger. So JavaScript has, or like Node has a thing built into it, which we're going to do here, where you can write the word debugger in your code at the beginning of a line anywhere. You notice when I run the code, nothing happens. Oh, whoops. Whoops, not like that. Not at the beginning of the line, on its own line. I made a mistake. Debugger like that. You'll notice when you run your program, like nothing happens. It's just the same. I wrote the word debugger in there. The place where this is going to be interesting for us is if I go node debugger and run my program like some.js. Now, I have not like node debug. My bad. Debug. If I go node debug, it's gonna run my program in debug mode. When you run it in debug mode, it'll tell you like, oh, use node inspect instead. It's the same thing. You can go node inspect some.js 4444. And it'll put itself into this debug mode. And what debug mode means is the code is not going to actually run. It's going to wait for you to tell it to start running. And you have the option of running it line by line. Right? Now, I'm going to do this in a separate, like a separate little project. I'm going to have a bunch of console logs. Just a bunch of console logs. And I'm going to throw the word debugger over here. What happens is when I run my project, so node inspect, I've called it debug.js. When it starts off, it's going to show me, okay, I haven't started running yet, but you can run me. You can run me line by line, or you can run me until I run into the next debugger statement. I'm going to run it right now, line by line, and you can do that by going next, 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 next. And you see what's happening here is it'll show me the line it's currently on, a little arrow. And it also, anytime something's printing out, like it'll show me the console log as well. I could go next, next. It's like that Ariana Grande thing where it's like, thank you, next. Next until I'm done. And then when I'm done, you would think I'm done, but it actually hops into weird node stuff. I didn't write any of this code. I don't know what var content read file sync is. I have no idea. So the next is not always super useful. What we'll generally use is the word continue. Whoops. Yeah. No, cont. Not the word continue, but cont. And that's short for continue. So what continue does is, if I have a bunch of debugger statements, like 2, maybe I'll make one here. Continue is going to run from a debugger point or from where you are until you get to the next debugger. Again, this is absolute total stretch. I'm just showing you a cool tool that's in here. Node inspect, debug. I run continue and it goes cont, and it runs until the next debugger, and I go cont. And it runs until the next debugger, and I go cont. And see, hello, what up, and easy, got console logged out. I go cont, and it runs out. And the reason that this might be cool, the reason that this might be pretty neat is because say that there's something like a variable, for example, var name equals, we're going to go Drake, right? There's some variable that at the end is supposed to say the name is yada yada. So technically, if I was to run this right now, and I go cont, eventually it says the name is Drake. What I can do is actually hop into my program. Is it exit? Dot exit. I always forget the. There we go. It's dot exit to edit exit. It will be in the notes that I send you. But what I could do is if I'm in the debugger, whenever it's stuck somewhere, like I have it waiting, I can type the command repl that puts me into a REPL. And I can do all kinds of stuff here. I can go 1 + 1. Oh, 1 + 1. 2. 2 + 4. 6. Cool. Something else I have access to is name. Haha. Ha ha ha. Right? I've changed what is in the REPL. Oh, whoops. I shouldn't have gone .exit. If I change what's in there, so REPL and then name equals Kanye West, I can go Control C to exit the REPL, and then I can continue. What got printed out was the name is Kanye West, right? So you can do funky stuff like that. Again, what I wanted to point out was that was absolute stretch with the debugger stuff. You're going to be exploring JavaScript Tutor today in the breakout. If you get some time before it, maybe play around with it, right? Cool. So last kind of things. These were our goals. Coding iteratively and incrementally. To kind of explain these words real quick, iteratively means do it over and over and over again. So you're gonna do a thing and then loop back and loop back, right? And that was us kind of figuring out the problem in big swaths. Incrementally is gonna mean adding little bits of functionality at a time. Okay? Don't feel bad about only coding a little bit at a time. You can write like 3 characters, a line, little bit at a time, whatever you're doing to make progress is good. Writing clean code and manual testing. So this was from the refactoring stuff that we did. Are there any questions? Again, I know this was a lot of stuff to kind of throw at you. Remember back to what we were talking about yesterday, where the point of lectures is not for you to have information sink in. So for example, that debugger stuff that I showed you, the point is not for you to learn the debugger, right? The point is just so that you see it. So the next time that you want to maybe play with it, you've seen it before. And the point is also for you to kind of see me go through the process of building something, right? Cool. Are there any questions? Cool. Are there any questions from Calgary? Or can I get like a no if there are no questions? All right. Guess, oh, Dan. Nope, we good. Awesome. Cool. Have a great rest of the day. And at 3 p.m., you're going to have a breakout. If you have any questions, please message me, and notes will be out really soon. Cool. Thanks, y'all.